violin music was too perfect, like the kind of sound that hides things. I'd only been inside the building for 5 minutes when I realized I didn't belong there. Not really. Polished marble underfoot, the river light bending off crystal glass, laughter pitched too high. I was a man who used to make letters stand straight on weathered brick. Tonight I was just a guest with shaky knees and a ticket that cost more than my first truck. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon, so you never miss a story like this one. I'd come to see my daughter's big night, the charity gala she'd planned for months. She called it the Wellspring Evening of Giving. I called it a world I didn't understand. Then I saw my granddaughter. She was weaving through a forest of sequined gowns and rented tuxedos, her eyes too serious for 11 years old. When she reached me, she didn't hug me. She pressed something into my palm, folded damp from her hand. "Don't stay long," she whispered. "Please, Grandpa, promise me." Her voice shook. I opened my hand, a torn corner of a sponsor badge. Across the white plastic in blue ink, someone had scrawled 3 lines. Mon 9, a temp cons V, and a string of numbers that looked like routing codes. I stared at it. "Where did you—" She looked over her shoulder. "They were talking about you." The sentence should have been nonsense, but she said it with the calm of a child who's already tested every grown-up she trusts and found them wanting. I slipped the fragment into my jacket pocket and looked around. The room was a hive of soft gold light, the stage backed by a massive LED wall scrolling through donor spotlights. My daughter stood near the center, radiant, holding a champagne flute. Beside her, tall, groomed, expensive, was Dr. Rowan Pell, the man she planned to marry and the founder of the Wellspring Initiative. He caught my eye across the crowd and smiled the way a dentist does before a hard extraction. The night had a program: dinner, silent auction, short film, then the keynote of gratitude. I found my assigned seat near the back, between a pair of donors who smelled of imported citrus and quiet power. Each table had a tablet for bidding and a silver-printed envelope reading, "Every gift restores dignity." I kept touching the badge fragment in my pocket. The letters smudged faintly against my thumb. Mon 9, a temp cons V. It looked like shorthand, maybe an appointment, until I thought about the word conservatorship. I'd heard it once years ago when an old neighbor lost control of his farm after signing some temporary guardianship papers for a medical evaluation. My stomach tightened. I tried to find my granddaughter again, but she'd been ushered off toward the youth table. A woman with perfect posture approached my chair. "Mr. Elliott, isn't it Dr. Pell speaks so fondly of your craftsmanship?" Her badge read Mara Quill, COO. "Fondly, huh?" I said. "That's kind of him." She smiled, all teeth. "He says your lettering has soul. We believe soul is what's missing in elder care, which is why Wellspring is building bridges between generations. Modern guardianship with compassion." Guardianship. The word landed like a nail-head under my shoe. I nodded, pretending interest while my pulse beat in my temples. She spoke about their fast-track safety assessments, digital monitoring, and philanthropic trust transitions. Each phrase sounded benign until you noticed how efficiently it stripped people of choices. Then the lights dimmed. The LED wall flared awake with a montage of smiling seniors, the kind used in prescription ads, slow pans over gardens, watercolor sunsets, the phrase "dignity through oversight." Applause rose, champagne glasses clinked. I couldn't clap. My hands were sweating too much. I excused myself and wandered toward the lobby where the air was cooler. The walls were lined with framed donor boards, etched glass, my daughter's design. Under each gold leaf name sat the same logo, a pair of open hands cradling a droplet of water. I leaned close, Beneath the decorative text, a small QR code glowed faintly under the downlight. I scanned it with my phone. Habit, curiosity. It opened a page listing affiliated partners, one of which was Hollow River Daft Trust. I'd never heard of it, but I recognized the address. Same street as Wellspring's headquarters. Same suite number 2. Footsteps approached. I turned. It was my daughter, her smile wide but her eyes cautious. "Dad, you okay? You look pale." "Just getting some air." She touched my sleeve. "Please don't be suspicious tonight. Rowan's done incredible work. He's helping hundreds of families." "Families or accounts?" I asked. She frowned. "Why do you always assume the worst?" "Because sometimes the worst is just well-funded." I didn't say it aloud. She squeezed my arm and went back inside before I could show her the badge piece. I stood there under the gallery lights, the sound of applause muffled by the heavy doors, and for the first time since my wife's funeral, I felt that familiar burn in my chest. The one that says something is wrong and no one's looking close enough. When I finally sat again, my granddaughter caught my gaze from the youth table. She mouthed one word, "Monday," then looked away as the music swelled for the next presentation. The stage lights brightened. Dr. Rowan Pell took the microphone. His voice flowed smooth as lacquer. "Tonight we celebrate care without burden," he said. "Tonight we expand the circle of trust." People leaned forward, hungry for virtue. I slid the badge fragment back out, smoothing its crease. Mon 9 attempt con svi. Whatever was coming Monday morning, it wasn't charity. And I had less than 4 hours left in this glittering hall to prove it. There's a trick to making a gold leaf letter stay true on rough brick. You start with chalk lines, 2 faint rails that no one will ever see. Then you breathe slow, let the brush find its rhythm and trust the muscle memory built over years. One bad tremor, one heartbeat too quick, and the whole word slides downhill. I hadn't painted a wall in almost 5 years, but that night, sitting under chandeliers shaped like frozen rain, I felt the same tremor in my hands. The kind that says steady now. One wrong move and everything tilts. The waiter poured more champagne I didn't want. I asked for coffee. He smiled the polite smile that means, "We don't serve that until dessert." So I waited, tracing invisible lines along the linen tablecloth, my brush now a shaking index finger. My canvas, this polished crowd, pretending the world could be fixed with donations and applause. They played a short film next, something glossy, filled with testimonials. "Wellspring gave me safety," one voice said. Another, "They handled everything so I could just live." Each smile looked rehearsed, each thank you trimmed to a sound bite. My daughter sat near the stage, radiant in pale silver. I could see how proud she was and how deeply she believed in this thing. She wasn't cruel, not careless, just convinced she'd finally built something meaningful. The camera panned across a building I recognized. The old Fenwick home. Used to be city-run assisted living until it closed. The sign I painted for them still hung over the door, my brushwork dulled by weather. The film said reborn as the Wellspring Sanctuary. I felt a twist low in my gut. They'd taken something that once stood for dignity and repainted it with words like optimization and efficiency. My granddaughter caught my eye from across the room. She wasn't smiling either. During the dinner service, a young volunteer approached our table carrying a tablet. "Silent auctions open, sir. You can bid right here. See all donations link automatically to the Wellspring Fund." I pretended to study the screen. Each item listed had 2 parts, a photo and a small button marked Assign Beneficiary. When I pressed one by mistake, a drop-down appeared. Choose from registered elders in transition. There were names, actual names, some I half recognized from my daughter's client list. Each had a small trust value beside it, measured in 5-figure increments. "Is this legal?" I asked. The volunteer smiled, thinking I was joking. "It's innovative. People sponsor full care packages, housing, management, medical advocacy. It's all automated now." Automated. That word again. I thanked him and let the screen go dark. Between courses, I escaped to the mezzanine balcony overlooking the river. The air carried a thin edge of October chill. I gripped the railing and watched lights shimmer on the water until my heartbeat slowed. When I was younger, I used to test every letter I painted by squinting. You could tell if a line was true by the way it blurred. Crooked things never disappear evenly. Tonight, squinting didn't help. The whole evening felt bent. A voice behind me said, "You're a hard man to find, Elliot." I turned. Breck, head of security, broad shoulders, ear mic glinting. He carried himself like someone used to saying sir only to himself. "Just catching air," I said. "Understandable. Crowds can be overwhelming. Dr. Pell wanted me to make sure you're comfortable." "That right?" He nodded once. "If you need anything, I'm your guy. We take our elder guests seriously." Elder guests. The phrase hit me sideways, like a label you don't remember agreeing to wear. "Appreciate it," I said and watched him walk back inside. His gait was military neat, each step measured as if counting time until Monday. Back at the table, dessert plates appeared, tiny towers of sugar dust. My daughter leaned over, whispering, "Dad, are you enjoying yourself?" "I'm trying. You'll like the keynote. Rowan says he wants to honor you. Something about legacy craftsmanship." "Honor me?" I said slowly. She nodded, distracted by another guest. "He thinks your story shows what our mission stands for: guidance, continuity. Legacy, continuity, words that, in the wrong hands, mean ownership." I smiled because she needed me to, not because I felt like it. The keynote began with Rowan stepping under a warm amber light. He thanked the board, the donors, the families. His voice filled every corner, controlled, sympathetic. Then he said my name. "A man whose hands built our city's first words," he said. "Elliot reminds us that guidance from one generation to another is the soul of care." Applause rolled. Cameras flashed. I froze under the attention. Then he added, "And like so many of our valued elders, Elliot has entrusted Wellspring to help manage his affairs, ensuring his art, his home, his well-being will always be protected." The room clapped louder. Only I knew that last sentence wasn't true. I'd never signed a thing. I looked at my daughter. Her expression flickered, confusion, then uncertainty, then something like fear before she forced another smile. My granddaughter stared at me, small hands clenched around her napkin. Rowan raised his glass. "To legacy care." I didn't raise mine. Later, after the toast, I cornered my daughter near the restroom corridor. "When did I supposedly entrust them with anything?" She frowned. "Dad, it's symbolic." He meant, "Symbolic my ass. That man just told 100 donors I've signed over my life." Her voice dropped. "Keep it down." "You don't see it, do you?" I said. "You've built a machine that eats the very people it claims to protect." Her eyes shone with tears. "He loves me. He wants to help. Love doesn't come with paperwork." She pulled back, angry now. "Why can't you believe that something good could include you for once? Because good doesn't need signatures it never asked for." She walked away, heels sharp against marble. I found my granddaughter sitting on the stairwell step that led to the service hallway. She looked small in her party dress, shoes kicked off. "Mom's crying," she said quietly. "I know. I heard them say Monday again." I crouched beside her, knees complaining. "Where?" "By the kitchen door. Dr. Pell told the lady with the tablet that the judge was ready. He said you'd be in temporary evaluation before lunch." My throat dried. Did he say what for? She nodded. Something about safety. And resistance. Resistance. That was his word for people like me. The ones who still read the fine print. I brushed her hair behind her ear. You did good telling me. Her eyes searched mine. Are we in trouble? Not yet, I said. But we will be if I can't keep these letters straight. She frowned. Letters? Just something I tell myself when things start to tilt. I stood, every joint creaking, and looked toward the glowing corridor that led back to the ballroom. The sound of polite laughter drifted through like a lie rehearsed too well. Somewhere in that brightness, my daughter was defending a man who planned to own her father by Monday. And I, an old painter with shaking hands, was going to have to redraw the lines before morning. Morning light always knows where to find your cracks. The next day it found mine in the lines around my eyes and the stiffness in my hands. I sat in my small kitchen, the smell of turpentine and coffee sharing the air, and stared at the badge fragment again. The blue ink had bled a little overnight, blurring Mon 9A into a watery smudge. I thought of what I'd heard, of my daughter's confused face when Rowan lied, of my granddaughter whispering Monday. It all felt like a mural half sketched, the image not yet clear but already wrong. By habit, I pulled a pad toward me and drew 2 faint chalk rails down the page. Between them, I wrote one word in pencil, trust. Then I measured the gap. It leaned left. I erased and redrew until it stood true. That's how you start fixing a thing. You notice which way it's falling. By noon, I was back at the riverfront hall. The gala cleanup was still underway. Staff carrying vases, folding tables, sweeping away confetti. I told the young custodian at the door I'd left my jacket. He waved me through. Inside, the LED wall was dark, the room stripped bare, but in the corner by the registration desk, 2 people were talking in the low, quick tone of conspirators. One was Mara Quill, the other a man I hadn't seen before wearing a facilities badge. Judge confirmed, Mara said. Transfer to evaluation suite Monday 9 sharp. Breck's team will handle the pickup. Address? The I-So man asked. Same as listed, Elm Street Bungalow. Don't spook him, just tell him it's a pre-admission check. Once he's signed, Pell takes over the media narrative. I froze. Elm Street Bungalow. That was me. A broom clattered nearby and Mara turned. I bent, pretending to check under a chair. She didn't notice me, but I saw the folder in her hand, a crimson cover stamped Temporary Guardianship Order. I slipped out before they finished, heart hammering. The autumn air hit like cold iron. For a moment I just stood there, fighting the urge to sit down on the curb. A life can turn into paperwork faster than paint can dry. I needed proof, something my daughter couldn't ignore, something that would speak louder than my word against Rowan's polish. So I called my granddaughter. She answered on the second ring, voice hushed. Grandpa, I'm at Mom's office. Is he there? No. He and Mara are meeting investors. Good. Listen carefully, sweetheart. You know that red folder Mara carries? Yeah. If you see it again, I need a picture, just the cover, don't open it. She hesitated. Will we get in trouble? Maybe, but not as much as if we do nothing. Okay. She whispered. Her courage was bigger than she was. I spent the afternoon tracing the Wellspring Initiative online. Their website looked like any other charity, clean fonts, water imagery, soft promises. But when I clicked deeper, patterns emerged, links leading to the Hollow River DAF Trust, which led to a maze of affiliate care entities, all registered at the same address. Every page carried the same phrase, transitional oversight for at-risk elders, the kind of phrase you build a trap out of. Around 5, my phone buzzed, a text from my granddaughter, blurry photo but clear enough. Red folder, top corner showing guardianship order, temporary. Beneath that, typed in black. Subject, Elliot, DOB 1959. The air left my lungs. I called her again, tried to sound calm. You did perfect. Now don't say anything to your mom yet. We're going to fix this the right way. How? I'm still drawing the lines. By evening, I was back in my workshop, the old garage with half-finished signs and the smell of sawdust that never quite leaves your clothes. I laid the photo on the bench beside an empty picture frame. Everything about this operation was designed to look benevolent. The language, the colors, the tone, gentle cages, polished locks. I opened a drawer, found an old digital recorder I used for voice memos when my hands were too stiff to write. I charged it, tested it. It worked. Red light steady as a heartbeat. If Rowan and Mara wanted to play theater, I'd give them a matinee. At dusk, my daughter called. Her voice was careful. Dad, Rowan said you might have misunderstood last night. He's worried you're stressed. Is that what he said? Yes. He suggested maybe a short stay at the sanctuary, just for rest. He says you'd have your own studio space. Studio, huh? Dad, please, he's trying to help. By 9 a.m., Monday? Silence. Then wary. How do you know about Monday? You might want to ask your fiancé, I said, and ended the call before my voice could shake. Night fell in thin layers. I sat at my workbench brushing dust from an old sign that read Riverside Hardware, since 1947. I'd painted that one 40 years ago when the owner said he wanted letters that would stand proud in any storm. I looked at those words now, the gold still catching what little light came through the window. Monday was coming. And if I was going to survive it, I'd have to use every trick I'd ever learned about how to make letters and people stay straight under pressure. There's a certain kind of silence that comes just before a storm, a quiet that isn't peace, but preparation. Sunday night carried that kind of quiet. The neighborhood had already gone to bed, porch lights blinking out one by one, but I stayed in my garage workshop, every lamp on, the smell of old varnish thick enough to taste. On the bench lay the pieces of my plan, the torn badge, my granddaughter's photo of the red folder, my phone, and a small portable hard drive from my sign painting days. I didn't know yet exactly how to stop what was coming Monday, but I knew one thing. If I didn't draw my own lines, someone else would draw them for me. I thought about my wife, how she used to say, "Truth doesn't need to shout, Elliot, it just needs a place to stand." That place would have to be the Gala Hall. At dawn, I drove to the diner near the river. The waitress, a round woman named Delaney, poured my coffee without asking. I'd painted her nephew's auto shop sign once. She remembered me. "You look like hell," she said. "Guess I'm practicing for tomorrow." She chuckled softly. "What's happening tomorrow?" I stared at the coffee's surface, seeing nothing but reflections of the light above. They planned to make me a ward of their kindness. She blinked. "Come again?" I told her enough to see her smile fade. Delaney had worked as a nurse before the diner. She knew the kind of paperwork that steals a person's life. "If what you're saying's true," she said, "you'll need witnesses, people who'll believe you before it's too late." "I've got one," I said, thinking of my granddaughter, "but she's 11. Delaney nodded slowly. "Then you'd better give the truth a microphone." That stuck with me. By afternoon, I was back home gathering what I could. Property deeds, medical forms, old IDs, anything that proved I was still capable of making my own choices. Then I opened my laptop and started combing through every digital corner of the Wellspring Initiative. Most of the site's public links looked harmless. But buried in the donor interface, I found something interesting. A section labeled Legacy Management Portal. It required a login, but the URL included a code string identical to the routing number on the torn badge. I copied it down. Then out of habit, I whispered to the empty room. Straight lines, steady hand. Using a few of the tricks my grandson had taught me years ago, I backtracked the code to a hidden directory. Inside was a spreadsheet titled Conservatorship Transfers. Phase 2. My heart climbed up into my throat. There were names, dozens, each with a date, a trust value, and the same phrase in the status column, pending evaluation. The first name on the Monday list, Elliot, D.O.B. 1959. The next 4 were other elders I recognized from my daughter's donor events. The total asset value beside our names was nearly $3 million. It wasn't just me they were taking. Around sunset, my daughter called again. Dad, can we please talk in person? Rowan's worried. I'll bet he is. He said you sounded paranoid on the phone yesterday, that you think he's trying to own me, I finished. He already filed the papers, sweetheart. Her breath caught. That's impossible, I'd know. Would you? He said it's just precautionary for your safety. Precautionary? You think safety starts with someone taking your name off your own mailbox? Silence, then smaller. He said you'd get confused. I almost laughed, but it came out more like a sigh. I've painted over 500 signs in this city. My hands may shake, but I still know how to spell my own damn name. Dad, tomorrow morning don't let them near my house. If you love me, you'll listen. She didn't answer. The line went dead. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing, counting the seconds between the tick of the clock and the beat of my heart. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from my granddaughter. They said we're going to pick you up early. Mom doesn't know I'm texting. Be ready, Grandpa, I typed back. Don't worry, I'll be ready. Then I stared at those words for a long time, because I didn't yet know if I was lying. Monday morning began before dawn. The sky was the color of wet cement, heavy and slow. I made coffee, packed my evidence, the folder photo, the spreadsheet, my recorder, and slipped everything into a worn leather satchel. At 8:15, a black van pulled up outside my house. 2 men in matching gray jackets stepped out, one holding a clipboard. I recognized the Wellspring logo on the side. One of them knocked. Mr. Elliott? We're here for your pre-admission check. Just a quick evaluation. I opened the door but left the chain on. You're early, I said. Dr. Pell wanted to make sure you're comfortable. I'm comfortable right where I am. The man smiled politely, but there was no warmth in it. Sir, this is for your safety. That's what they said to every man who ever got tricked into signing something. Behind them, another car pulled up, my daughter's. She got out, looking frightened, pleading. Dad, please, just let them talk to you. It's temporary. Temporary. The word that hides the permanent. I closed the door, locked it, then called Delaney. You said I'd need witnesses, I told her. You busy this morning? Not anymore, she said. By 8:45, she was there, phone camera rolling from across the street. The 2 men made one more attempt before leaving, frustrated. I watched them drive off toward the river. My daughter followed, still on her phone, crying. When they were gone, I let out a shaky breath and leaned against the wall. The first battle, at least, was over. Now came the part where I'd have to make the truth visible, loud enough for the whole city to see. And I knew exactly where that would happen. Back in the same hall where this all began, under the same LED wall that once told lies dressed as hope. If they wanted Monday to belong to them, they'd pick the wrong craftsman. Because I was done painting in silence. Morning slid into late afternoon like a tired promise. After the van pulled away, the neighborhood went still again. Birds over the power lines, someone's wind chime ringing out of time. I stayed at the window for a long while, watching the street that had almost become my cage. Then I picked up my satchel and left. I didn't drive toward the police. I didn't drive toward a lawyer. I drove toward the glass tower on 1st Street, the headquarters of the Wellspring Initiative. Because some things you can't fix from far away. You have to stand in front of the wall that's been painted wrong and scrape it down yourself. The lobby was bright, sterile, scented faintly with lemon. The receptionist smiled, the kind of smile that lives between customer service and surveillance. "Can I help you, sir?" "Tell Dr. Pell that Elliot's here." Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I believe he's expecting me, one way or another." She opened her mouth to protest, but before she could, my daughter appeared from the elevator, looking pale, startled, exhausted. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "Trying to clear my name before they put it on a clipboard," her voice lowered. "Rowan says this is all a misunderstanding. Please don't make a scene." "A scene's all I've got left," I said. "Unless you want to lose more than your reputation." She blinked. "What are you talking about?" I handed her the printed spreadsheet, the one showing my name and the other scheduled for evaluation. She read the first line, her mouth tightening. "He said this was internal, just hypothetical." "Sweetheart, it's a grocery list and we're the groceries." She wanted to believe me, I could see that much. But belief is a hard thing to find when love and pride are fighting for the same seat. Rowan's voice arrived before he did. "Elliot," he said, smooth as silk pulled over barbed wire. "I was hoping we could talk privately." He came toward us, smile practiced, eyes already measuring angles. Mara trailed behind him, tablet in hand. "Talk, sure," I said. "You can start by explaining why my house was almost visited by your men this morning." "Ah," he said, pressing his fingertips together like a priest mid-sermon. "That must have been a scheduling error. We occasionally conduct wellness checks when our clients seem distressed. I never signed up as a client." He chuckled softly. "Memory lapses are natural at your age." My daughter flinched. "Rowan," he held up a hand, still smiling. "Darling, please let me handle this. Elliot, we only want to ensure your safety. The papers were precautionary, nothing more." "Precautionary papers with my birth date, address, and Monday morning appointment time." Rowan's expression didn't flicker. "Transparency can sometimes feel invasive, I understand." "You don't understand anything about me," I said. "But you're about to." I reached into my satchel and placed my digital recorder on the reception counter. Pressed play. Mara's voice filled the room, recorded from the Gala cleanup. "Judge confirmed. Transfer to evaluation suite Monday 9 sharp. Breck's team will handle pickup." Rowan's smile faltered for the first time. My daughter looked from me to him, disbelief spreading across her face. "You told me Dad was paranoid." "I told you he was tired," Rowan corrected softly. "This could be edited." "I didn't edit a thing," I said. "That's your voice, Mara. And yours, Doctor, in the background saying my name." He moved around the counter, trying to appear calm. "Elliot, this is a serious accusation. Do you really think you can threaten a registered nonprofit?" "I don't need to threaten you," I said. "I just need people to listen." He exhaled through his nose, controlled. "You've misunderstood. We handle conservatorships for families who request them. Your daughter expressed concern." I turned to her. "Did you?" She shook her head, tears welling. "No, never. I just signed forms for event insurance." "Those weren't insurance," I said. "They were the foundation's care authorizations." That's how he gets you to deliver the bait. Rowan's charm slipped then, only for a heartbeat, but enough to show the metal underneath. "You have no idea what you're stepping into, Elliot." "Oh, I think I do." I opened the satchel again and took out a USB drive. "Every donor you've converted, every trust you've siphoned, it's all here. I found your hidden portal. You've been laundering compassion." Mara reached for her phone, probably to call Breck. My daughter stopped her. "Don't," she said, voice trembling but firm. Rowan turned to her, tone honeyed again. "Darling, you're overwhelmed. Let's get you some air." She stepped back. "No. I'm finally starting to breathe." He looked between us, the warmth draining from his face. Then quieter. "You can't stop this. It's bigger than one man's workshop full of paint and ghosts." "Maybe," I said. "But ghosts don't sign contracts, and I'm still alive." He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "You really think the public cares who owns a few dusty houses? They'll see me crying on camera about protecting seniors, and you'll look like a bitter old man. The story's already written." I met his eyes. "Then I'll repaint it." Something in that made him pause, like he'd heard a language he didn't understand. Mara tugged his sleeve. "Security's on their way." "Good," I said. "We'll all wait together." It didn't take long. Breck appeared, broad as ever, jaw tight. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes," I said, "and it's standing in front of me." He reached for my arm. My daughter stepped between us. "Don't touch him," she said. For a second, nobody moved. Then Rowan smoothed his jacket, the actor reclaiming his stage. "We'll postpone this conversation until tomorrow. Elliot, I strongly advise you to rest." "Tomorrow's too late," I said. "You made sure of that." He walked away, Mara and Breck flanking him. The automatic doors hissed shut behind them, leaving the three of us, me, my daughter, and the silence they couldn't control. My daughter sank into a lobby chair, covering her face. "I didn't know," she whispered. "God, Dad, I didn't know." I sat beside her, the stiffness in my knees forgotten. "You couldn't have. Men like him paint everything in light so bright it blinds you to the shadows." She looked up, tears streaking her makeup. "What do we do now?" "We make them see the shadows," I said. "And when the light hits just right, everyone in that city will know what they really bought." That night, back in my garage, I laid the USB drive on the bench and stared at it like a loaded brush. I thought about what Delaney had said, that the truth needed a microphone. The LED wall at the Gala still stood there, waiting for the next charity event scheduled for Friday. I knew a kid who used to help me with signage, a quiet tech named Luis who now worked for the event contractor. I found his number in an old notebook, called, and when he answered, I said, "Luis, it's Elliot. Remember the mural we did with the riverboats?" "Sure do. Still holding up. I need your help painting one more message, only this time the canvas is made of light." It's strange what courage feels like when you're old. It's not fire. It's not even steel. It's a low hum in your bones. The same one that tells you to hold a brush steady even when your hand shakes. That hum woke me early the next morning. I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead, packed the USB drive, the recorder, and the badge fragment into a battered lunchbox. Old habit, hiding valuable things inside something ordinary. Then I drove to the convention center where the next Wellspring event was being prepped. Rows of vans lined the dock entrance, people in black shirts unloading cables and lights. The LED wall stretched across the stage like a sleeping giant waiting for its cue. I found Luis kneeling near a tangle of cords, his dark hair under a backward cap. He looked up, and when he recognized me, his face cracked into a grin. "Elliot, thought you retired." "I did," I said. "Turns out retirement's more work than I planned." He laughed, then saw the look in my eyes, and the laughter died. "This about the Gala mess? People been talking. Some old guy's name was on a guardianship list." "That old guy was me." His grin vanished. "No kidding." "Afraid not. I need to borrow your switcher for a few minutes today, discreetly, and I'll need one of your feeds to the main LED wall tomorrow night." Luis whistled low. "That's a tall order, sir. Rowan's people got eyes everywhere." "I know. That's why I'm asking someone who still has a soul. He rubbed the back of his neck. What's on the drive? Proof, I said. And if we play it right, it'll be the first honest thing that Wall's ever shown. We found a quiet corner behind the rigging. I told him everything. The fake conservatorships, the falsified care authorizations, the way Rowan used his charm like a scalpel. I showed him the spreadsheet, the audio recording, the red folder photo. He scrolled through the files slowly. Damn, you weren't kidding. I never kid about lettering or life. He nodded, tapping the drive thoughtfully. Okay. The system runs off a central media server. If we load your file as a placeholder video and rename it under the sponsor reel folder, it'll play when I trigger it from the control booth. Can you do that without anyone noticing? Not for long. Once the file runs, they'll know something's off. But you'll have about 90 seconds before someone kills the feed. 90 seconds, I said. That's longer than most prayers. At noon, my daughter called. Her voice was thin but steady. I'm meeting with the board. They said they're suspending operations until Rowan explains the allegations. He's furious. Good, I said. Let him stay busy. Are you sure about going public, Dad? Once it's out, you can't pull it back. I'm sure. Truth's like gold leaf, fragile until you press it down for good. There was a pause. Then softly, I'm proud of you. Those 4 words nearly undid me. By late afternoon, Luis and I had the plan nailed down. Tomorrow night's legacy banquet would open with a donor, real, silent images, soft piano, words about dignity. My file would replace it halfway through. He wrote me a note on a scrap of gaffer's tape, Chanel 4, button C. Press that when you're ready, he said. It'll push your video live. I folded the tape, tucked it into my shirt pocket like a talisman. Luis, I said quietly, if this goes sideways, you walk away. Don't risk your job. He smirked. Sir, after what you showed me, I'm not the one at risk of losing my soul. That evening, I drove home by the river. Streetlights rippled on the water, long strokes of gold trembling with the current. For the first time in days, I felt something close to calm. Then my phone buzzed. A new text. No name, just a number. You think you're clever, old man. You don't know who owns what you're playing with. A second message followed. A photo of my workshop, lights off, door half open. My heart stopped. I floored the gas, the tires screamed against wet pavement. When I reached the house, the place was empty, but the drawers had been opened, papers scattered, and on my bench, lying right where the USB had been, was a note written on wellspring letterhead. Transparency can sometimes feel invasive. The USB was gone. I sat down hard, the air leaving my lungs. My hands shook so badly I had to grip my knees to stop them. After a while, I noticed something. A faint glint under the table, the lunchbox. They'd missed it. Inside lay the backup drive. The one I'd copied earlier without thinking, old craftsman habit. I exhaled shakily, half a laugh, half a prayer. You almost got me, you bastard. I texted Luis. Change of plan, they know. Use backup tomorrow. I'll bring it myself. He replied within seconds. Copy that. Booth at 7. Stay invisible. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The clock ticked, rain hit the roof, and I kept hearing my granddaughter's whisper. Monday, Grandpa. Monday. Well, Monday had come and gone, and I was still here. But the storm hadn't finished. It was only shifting direction. They thought stealing the drive would stop me. They didn't understand. A painter always keeps a second coat ready. Tomorrow, under those bright lights, their own words would hang 10 feet tall, in front of every donor and reporter they'd ever fooled. And maybe then the city would finally see what care had cost. Morning arrived heavy, a sky the color of pewter pressing low over the city. Rain streaked the shop window, and I could smell metal and wet earth. a scent that always told me the day would not go quietly. I checked the backup drive again, touched the gaffer tape note in my pocket. O Chanel 4, button C. Luis's handwriting looked sure, younger than the rest of us who'd lost that steadiness. The plan was simple enough to sound foolish. Walk into the legacy banquet like I belonged there, reach the control booth before the keynote, and push a single button. One breath. One line. One stroke of paint. If it landed straight, the truth would hold. By evening, the rain had slowed to a mist. The hall glittered from blocks away, its glass facade glowing blue. Cars rolled up in neat procession, valets darting like mayflies under umbrellas. I parked 2 streets down and walked, collar up, satchel clutched close. Inside, the place looked even grander than before. Strings, champagne, polished speeches. The theme banners read "Legacy Through Compassion." They were still using my daughter's design. She spotted me near the back and hurried over. "Dad, you shouldn't be here." "Neither should half these people," I said. "How's the board?" "Divided. Rowan called in favors. He says everything online is fabricated." "Then tonight we unfabricate it." Her eyes flicked toward the stage. "Security's doubled. Breck's watching every corner." "Good," I said. "That means he'll be looking in the wrong direction." Luis waited near the sound console, wearing a crew lanyard and calm he probably didn't feel. "You made it," he murmured. "They know you're helping me?" "Not yet. I told them you're here to review the donor signage. Figured that was close enough to truth." He handed me a small black remote. "You'll have to trigger it from the side aisle, closer to the wall receiver. 90 seconds, remember?" I nodded. 90 seconds of clarity after months of deceit. The lights dimmed. The dinner chatter faded. Dr. Rowan Pell stepped to the podium, framed by the giant LED wall blooming to life behind him. Soft piano, footage of smiling seniors, the well-worn language of salvation. He looked every inch the savior, hair perfect, voice smooth, eyes humble. "Tonight we reaffirm our promise," he said, "to protect those who built the world we inherit." Applause rippled like a tide. I eased along the side aisle, remote in hand. Luis caught my eye across the tech pit and gave a subtle nod. Rowan continued, "Our foundation has weathered malicious rumors this week, distortions born of fear. But love will outlast fear, as it always has." That was my cue. I pressed button C. The screen blinked once. The music skipped. Then the smiling footage froze mid-frame, and a new video flickered to life, grainy but loud enough to silence the room. Mara Quill's voice. "Judge confirmed. Transfer to evaluation suite Monday 9 sharp. Breck's team will handle pickup." A collective intake of breath. Then Rowan's voice followed, smooth and cruel. "The old man's combative. A 24-hour hold will make him grateful." Every face turned toward the stage. Rowan's mouth opened, but no sound came. He looked back at the wall where now appeared the spreadsheet. Rows of names, asset values, the heading conservatorship transfers. Phase 2. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "My aunt's on that list." Phones rose like a forest of mirrors. I stepped forward into the light. "That's what your donations bought," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Not dignity, possession." Security started moving, but Luis locked the console, fingers flying across keys. The feed wouldn't stop. On-screen emails scrolled. Rowan's signature, Mara's directives, the Hollow River account routes. Each line a nail driven into their coffin. Rowan finally found his voice. "This is a fabrication. He's manipulating images. Those files came from your server," I said. "Maybe the truth just looks unfamiliar to you." My daughter stood now too, tears cutting lines through her makeup. "He's telling the truth," she said into the microphone she'd taken from a stunned host. I saw the documents. They used my events to find victims. The crowd shifted from confusion to anger in a single breath. Rowan tried to step off stage, but Breck blocked his path, not to protect him, but to keep him there. Even a man like Breck knew when the tide had turned. Luis signaled me. 10 seconds left before the system rebooted. I looked out at the sea of faces, donors and families and reporters, all realizing what they'd funded. Compassion doesn't take signatures, I said quietly. It takes responsibility. Then the feed cut. For a moment there was only silence, then shouting, cameras, chaos. Rowan pushed past Breck, Mara on his heels, security escorting them toward the exit as police sirens wailed somewhere outside. I felt my knees go weak, but my daughter was suddenly beside me, arm around my shoulder. "It's over," she whispered. "Not yet," I said. "But it's finally begun." Later, outside under the drizzle, Luis joined us. "Guess 90 seconds was enough," he said with a shaky grin. "More than enough," I replied. "Thank you," he shrugged. "My grandma used to say the truth's like primer, you can't paint over it forever." I smiled at that. The kid understood more about paint and people than most executives ever would. The police cars pulled up then, blue lights turning the wet pavement into broken glass. Inside the hall, voices echoed, a city waking up from its polite sleep. I reached into my pocket, touched the gaffer tape one last time, and let the rain wash the ink away. The sirens bled into the night like a warning that wouldn't quit. Red and blue lights pulsed across the wet marble of the convention center, throwing strange colors on the faces of people who, an hour ago, thought they were buying virtue. Now they just looked small, shivering, uncertain of what side they'd stood on. I sat on the low stone planter near the valet stand. My daughter leaned against me, her sequined dress damp from the rain. Luis hovered a few feet away, answering questions from a young officer. Across the street, camera crews were already setting up. The city's hunger for spectacle would have its fill before morning. I kept my eyes on the hall doors, half expecting Rowan to appear again, that perfect smile cracked, demanding one more chance to spin his story. But he didn't. They had taken him out a side exit with Mara at his shoulder and Breck following close behind, jaw set like a man deciding which side of his conscience to sleep on. A detective approached, plain clothes, notebook in hand. "Mr. Elliott, I'm Detective Mora. Need a few minutes." "Sure." My voice came out rough. He flipped a page. "We've got multiple witnesses, your audio recordings, and that projection feed. You're aware that what you just did qualifies as an unauthorized system breach?" "I'm aware," I said. "But it's also called whistleblowing where I come from." He smirked a little. "Well, nobody's pressing charges against you yet. The state AG's office is already involved." My daughter straightened. "You're going after Rowan?" Mora nodded. "We've had complaints about Wellspring for months, but nothing solid. Tonight changed that." He glanced at me again. "You did good, sir. But you should get some rest. Media's going to hound you come sunrise." Rest. The word sounded like a rumor. When he left, my daughter sat beside me again. The rain had slowed to mist. "Dad, they want me to make a statement," she said quietly. "The board, too. They're calling it a leadership betrayal." "You don't owe them anything," I said. "I do. I owe the families who trusted us." She looked at me, eyes red but clear. "But before I do that, I have to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Can you forgive me for not seeing it sooner?" The question landed heavier than any courtroom could manage. I stared at the puddles, catching the flashing lights, remembering her as a little girl sitting on my shoulders at county fairs, pointing out signs I'd painted. She'd believed letters were magic then. Maybe they still were. I put my hand over hers. "There's nothing to forgive. Belief isn't blindness, it's hope. And you had enough hope for both of us. She blinked hard, nodding once. Then let's make this right. Completely. That's the only kind of right worth making. Luis walked over, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. They're letting me pack up the booth. Guess I'm fired. I stood. No, you're free. There's a difference. He grinned faintly. Thanks. You think they'll really shut Wellspring down? They might change the name, repaint the signs, I said. But not before the city knows what those colors meant. He extended a hand. If you ever need another pair of steady hands, I shook it. You've got the right ones, kid. He left with a nod, vanishing into the blur of flashing lights. Reporters circled closer. A woman called out, Mr. Elliot, are you a hero or a hacker tonight? I almost laughed. Neither. Just a man tired of crooked lines. That seemed to satisfy no one, but I didn't care. The microphones, the lights, they were all just new versions of the LED wall, hungry for another story. What mattered was that my granddaughter would wake up tomorrow safe, that my daughter would no longer build dreams from poison. Hours later, after the crowd thinned, we walked to the car. The city felt quieter now, like a room after a storm when the dust hasn't settled but the air's finally clean. Inside the car, my daughter turned to me. The bank called. They froze all the Wellspring accounts. The investigators want copies of everything you have. I pulled the small backup drive from my pocket, still wrapped in gaffer tape. You'll give them this tomorrow morning. Don't let it out of your sight. She nodded. And you? I've got one last thing to do. What's that? Go home and lock the door from the inside for once. She smiled, a tired, fragile smile, but real. You're coming over tomorrow, right? She wants to see you. Wouldn't miss it, I said. When she dropped me at my house, dawn was bleeding through the clouds. I stood in the driveway watching her taillights fade, the smell of wet pavement sharp in my nose. My knees ached, my hands trembled, but there was a peace under it all. A quiet steadiness I hadn't felt in years. Inside the workshop was as I'd left it, brushes drying, letters half finished on a scrap board that read, Riverside Repair, we fix what breaks. I picked up the smallest brush and traced over the word fix. Not perfect, but straight enough to hold. The phone rang mid-morning. It was Delaney. Heard the news, she said. You really did it, didn't you? Guess so. You realize the city's gonna make you into a symbol. I've been called worse, she laughed. Good on you, Elliot. Most folks just grumble. You swung the hammer. Sometimes a hammer's just a steady hand holding a truth. When I hung up, I walked outside and sat on the porch steps. Across the street, the river shimmered under the pale sun. Everything looked ordinary again, the kind of ordinary you fight your whole life to keep. I thought about the ask my daughter had made, forgiveness, and how she'd answered it herself by standing up in that hall. That's the thing about forgiveness. It's never just granted. It's built, one honest act at a time. I breathed in the cold air, felt the tremor in my hands ease a little, and whispered to the morning, We're not done yet. 3 days after the gala, the footage had circled the world. Every screen, every feed, every whispered conversation in coffee shops carried the same headline. Philanthropy fraud exposed at charity gala. My name floated somewhere in the middle of the story. Old man, whistleblower, reluctant hero. I didn't read most of it. The truth doesn't need applause, and I'd had enough light on my face to last the rest of my life. Reporters came by anyway, knocking on the door with questions. That all sounded the same. What made you do it? Were you afraid? Is your daughter cooperating with the investigation? I'd answer only one thing. I saw something crooked and I tried to make it straight, that's all. They'd nod, disappointed, waiting for something grander. But the real story wasn't in the scandal. It was in the silence that followed it. The city moved fast once the truth had a microphone. The Attorney General announced criminal charges against Dr. Rowan Pell and Mara Quill, wire fraud, elder exploitation, falsifying guardianship documents. The board of Wellspring voted to dissolve the foundation. The care facilities under their network were seized for audit. And me? I went back to my workshop. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. I felt tired, like a man who's spent all night painting a wall he'll never see dry. Late that afternoon, my daughter came by. She looked smaller without the gala lights, just a woman trying to find her footing again. "My statements tomorrow," she said. "They want me to testify about the internal process. Emails, donor contacts, all of it. You ready?" She nodded slowly. "I will be. Mom used to say courage is just fear holding steady." "That's about right." We sat on the porch watching the river glint between houses. The same river that had reflected every lie now shimmered clean under the sun. After a while she said, "There's a piece of the story they don't know yet." "What's that?" "That you saved more than yourself. There are 32 families whose accounts were about to transfer. They froze the assets because of your file." I didn't have words for that. My hands just tightened around the coffee mug. She looked at me, eyes soft. "You ever wonder why my daughter trusted you that night? Why she brought you that badge? Because she's got her mother's sense of truth. She said you always tell when something's not level. She said if she showed you, you'd fix it." That hit harder than any headline. 2 days later, I had to go downtown to sign a witness affidavit. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish, the scent of bureaucratic dust trying to disguise itself as justice. I saw Breck in the hallway, out of uniform, plain jacket, eyes tired. He nodded once. "You turned them in," I said. He shrugged. "Didn't have a choice once the video hit. Guess we both had our lines." "You think the rest of them knew?" He looked away. "Some did. Some just didn't want to know." "That's how rot spreads," I said. He gave a small smile. "Funny thing about rot, it can't live in sunlight." We shook hands, not as friends, but as two men who'd survived the same storm from opposite sides of the glass. When I left the courthouse, people were gathered outside holding signs. "Protect our elders, guardianship reform now." A reporter asked for a quote. I almost kept walking, but then I stopped. I thought about my wife, how she used to tell me the hardest part of art was knowing when to stop painting. I turned toward the cameras. "I don't want fame," I said. "I want change. Build something that can't be bought. That's the only apology worth hearing." Then I walked away. That night, my granddaughter came to stay. She burst through the door with her school backpack and that wild, serious energy only children have when they've learned too much too soon. "Grandpa, they talked about you in class," she said. "My teacher said you're brave." I laughed softly. "She should see me try to get up off this chair." "No, really, she said you stood up for the truth." "Truth's lighter than it looks," I said. "You just have to pick it up before someone else buries it." She sat at my workbench watching me clean brushes. "Can I paint something?" "Of course." She dipped a small brush into gold, her tongue poking out as she focused. After a few minutes, she held up the board. In shaky letters, she'd written, "We keep people safe." My throat tightened. "That's perfect," I whispered. Later, after she went to bed, I stayed up staring at that small board. Outside, the river whispered against the banks. In the distance, floodlights still illuminated the courthouse steps where the cameras waited for the next day's trial. I thought about all the walls I'd ever painted, how every one of them eventually faded, cracked, or got replaced. But maybe this one, the wall of truth we'd built in that hall, would hold a little longer. For the first time in weeks, I turned off the lights and let the dark stay dark. The courthouse steps looked different in daylight, less grand, more ordinary, like the kind of place where truth comes dragging its feet, clutching documents and nerves. I stood there, suit borrowed from a neighbor, tie crooked, feeling like a man dressed for someone else's life. Cameras lined both sides of the entry, their red lights blinking in the morning fog. My daughter squeezed my arm. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," she said. "I've talked my whole life," I told her. "Today, I just have to say something." Inside, the courtroom smelled of new carpet and old tension. Rowan sat at the defense table, gray suit, hair still perfect. Even in disgrace, he looked curated. Mara was beside him, pale but unflinching. Across from them, the state's attorney flipped through a stack of exhibits like a deck of loaded cards. When the judge entered, everyone stood. I watched Rowan rise slowly, chin high, like he was at a lecture he'd written. My name came up first on the witness list. The walk to the stand felt longer than it was. I placed my hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. The wood under my palm was smooth from 1,000 oaths before mine. I wondered how many of them had actually held. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Grant, smiled gently. "Mr. Elliott, could you tell the court how you first became aware of the Wellspring Initiative's misconduct?" I cleared my throat. "My granddaughter handed me a piece of a badge at a gala. It had some writing on it, Mon 9 Attempt Cons V. I didn't know what it meant. Then I learned it meant me." A ripple went through the room. I went on, steady as I could, telling them about the fake guardianships, the spreadsheet, the LED wall. When I described the recording, the voices, the laughter, Grant nodded to the technician. "Your Honor, permission to play Exhibit C." The judge nodded. The speakers crackled to life. Then Mara's voice filled the chamber. "Judge confirmed. Transfer to evaluation suite Monday 9 sharp." And Rowan's voice followed, smooth and confident. "The old man's combative. A 24-hour hold will make him grateful." No one moved. You could hear the hum of the lights overhead. That was the sound of compassion, what it becomes when money gets the last word. When the clip ended, the judge leaned back slowly. "Mr. Elliott," she said, "what made you decide to risk exposing this publicly?" I thought for a moment. "Because people like me don't have much left but our names, and I wasn't about to let mine become property." There was a tremor in my hands. I let it stay. Let them all see it. "Anything else?" the judge asked. "Yes," I said. "When someone tells you they're saving you, check what they're holding behind their back." A few in the gallery nodded, quiet, respectful. Grant smiled faintly. No further questions. Rowan's attorney rose, slick and ready. "Mr. Elliott," he began, "you've admitted to hacking a private event system, correct?" I pressed a button. "On a system you did not own. I owned the truth that came out of it." He frowned. "You understand this could be considered vigilantism." "I understand it could be considered courage, too," I said. He stepped closer. "You dislike Dr. Pell, don't you?" "I dislike what he does to words like care and dignity." His jaw tightened. "You're aware my client has contributed millions to elder housing?" "Yeah," I said. "Funny thing about houses. They don't mean much if you've stolen the people who are supposed to live in them." A few reporters scribbled harder. Rowan's lawyer sat down. I could feel Rowan's gaze on me, sharp and cold, but beneath it, just a flicker of something smaller. Fear, maybe, or shame. After my testimony, my daughter took the stand. She read her own emails, her voice shaking but strong. She described how she'd been tricked into signing authorization forms disguised as event logistics. She admitted her blindness, her trust, her guilt. At one point, the prosecutor asked, Why did you stay with Dr. Pell after your father expressed concern? Her voice cracked. Because he made me believe doubt was cruelty, and my father's always been kind. I looked down then. Didn't want the court to see tears from an old man in a borrowed suit. When she stepped down, she brushed her hand across my shoulder as she passed. No words. Just warmth. Grant called her final witness, Breck. He testified that he'd received direct orders from Mara to retrieve Mr. Elliot for pre-admission, and that when he questioned the legality, Rowan told him, "Compassion needs teeth." That line landed like a hammer. When Breck left the stand, he didn't look at Rowan. He just walked out of the courtroom and didn't come back. The defense tried one last performance. Rowan took the stand in his own defense, of course. He always needed an audience. He talked about miscommunication, systemic gaps, the tragedy of misunderstanding. He called me confused, then courageous in intention but misguided in execution. Every sentence was a ribbon tied around poison. When the prosecutor asked him, "Did you or did you not approve the temporary conservatorship orders without consent?" he smiled. "Intent is a complex thing," he said. That was all the jury needed to hear. After court recessed, I walked outside into the bright afternoon. Reporters surged forward, microphones flashing. "Mr. Elliot, how does it feel to hear the recording played in front of the man who said it?" I stopped on the courthouse steps, the same steps where days ago I'd spoken about change. "It feels like the paint finally dried straight," I said. "That's enough for me." That evening, my granddaughter waited on my porch swing, legs tucked under her. She'd been drawing with sidewalk chalk, bright letters spelling truth across the concrete. "Mom said they played the bad man's voice in court," she said. "They did." "Was he sorry?" I sat beside her. "I think he was surprised that words can hurt both ways." She leaned against me. "Will they make him stop?" "Yes," I said quietly. "But we'll still have to remind people why." We sat there until the sky went gold, then gray, then the soft kind of dark that carries forgiveness in it. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like waiting, it felt like peace. The verdict came on a Thursday morning, gray sky, cold air that smelled like rain and metal. I stood outside the courthouse before dawn, the same cracked steps, the same camera barricade waiting for a headline to chew on. My daughter joined me, clutching a paper cup of coffee for each of us. "They'll announce it at 10, she said quietly. "The jury's been out since yesterday." "I know." I took the cup, hands trembling more from memory than cold. "Doesn't take that long to tell truth from performance. It takes that long to convince yourself you heard it." She half smiled. "You always talked like that, like everything was a sign to be painted straight." "Maybe it is," I said. "Even justice." When we went inside, the courtroom was already packed. Reporters, lawyers, families of victims, even a few faces I recognized from the first gala. At the defense table, Rowan Pell looked smaller now, somehow deflated. The perfect posture sagged. The camera-ready smile had dried into a thin line. Mara Quill sat beside him, eyes dull, her manicured hands fidgeting with a tissue she wasn't using. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Then the clerk read the charges. Count 1, wire fraud. Count 2, exploitation of elders. Count 3, conspiracy to falsify guardianship orders. Count 4, money laundering. "On all counts," the clerk said, voice steady, "the jury finds the defendants guilty." It didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet, heavy, like a nail finally sinking flush into wood after 1,000 blows. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed, someone sobbed softly in the back row. Rowan sat motionless, staring at the table. Then, almost absently, he looked up, right at me. For a second, the courtroom noise fell away. There was no hate in his eyes, no apology either, just emptiness. The same hollow look I'd seen in his gaze the first night at the gala when he said the word legacy like it was currency. The judge spoke, something about sentencing, restitution, years to be served. I barely heard it. I just kept watching the way the morning light bounced off the glass nameplates along the courtroom wall. The donors, the committees, the polite monuments to generosity. Names on glass. They glowed like they were innocent. But I knew better. I'd learned that glass keeps fingerprints longer than people think. Afterward, on the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed again. "Mr. Elliott, what do you have to say about the verdict? Do you think justice was served? Are you satisfied?" I looked past them toward the river, the courthouse reflection rippling in the water. "Justice isn't satisfaction," I said. "It's correction. You fix the line, you don't celebrate the mistake." They didn't write that down right, but maybe that's not for paper anyway. We walked back to my daughter's car. She exhaled shakily like she'd been holding her breath since the day she met him. "Does it ever end, Dad? The noise, the people asking?" "It quiets," I said. "Doesn't end. Truth keeps echoing long after the crowd forgets what it means." She nodded, eyes on the windshield. "I'm going to rebuild the foundation, not the name, something smaller, real. No donors, no sponsorships, just care." "You sure you want to carry that weight again? It's the only way to make it right." I smiled faintly. "Then do it with clean hands." Later that afternoon, I went home and did something I hadn't done in years. I cleaned the windows of my workshop, every one of them, inside and out, the grime of months, maybe years, washed away under the rag and the smell of vinegar. When I finished, sunlight poured through clean glass, landing on the walls, on the scattered brushes and old boards. The gold leaf on the half-finished Riverside repair sign caught the light, gleaming steady as fire. Through that brightness, I saw my own reflection, wrinkled, yes, worn, but still here. Near dusk, a car pulled up. My granddaughter jumped out, holding something behind her back. "Close your eyes," she shouted before I could ask. I did. She placed something cool and flat in my hands. "Okay. Open." It was a glass plaque, handmade, edges uneven, letters etched in a child's deliberate hand. "Truth belongs to everyone." She looked at me, waiting for approval. I couldn't speak. I just set it on the shelf by the window where the light would hit it every morning. Then I whispered, "That's straighter than anything I ever painted." She grinned. "You taught me how." That night I walked down to the river. The courthouse lights glimmered across the water, their reflection bent by the current. No glass, no marble, no speeches, just ripples carrying the truth downstream out into the dark. I stood there a long while, coat collar turned up against the chill, hands steady at last. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a man fixing things. I felt like something had finally stayed fixed. Forgiveness doesn't sound like trumpets or thunder. It sounds like dishes in a sink, a clock ticking, the soft creak of a house learning to breathe again. 2 weeks after the verdict, the city went back to its regular heartbeat. The news moved on. The headlines shrank. The story that had turned our lives inside out was now just another archived link people would stumble across someday when looking for something else. But inside my house, the echoes hadn't quieted yet. My daughter came over that morning carrying grocery bags instead of guilt. That was new. "I brought coffee and pie," she said. "Then you're already forgiven," I said, half smiling. We ate in the kitchen, the same way we used to when she was little. Her talking too much, me pretending not to. After a while, she looked around the room. "You cleaned," she said, noticing the polished windows, the brushes lined up like soldiers. "Couldn't keep working in the dark." She nodded. "I've been thinking of starting something new, small, local care volunteers for elders who actually want help, not control. Delaney's offered to run logistics." That woman doesn't rest, I said. She said she sleeps better knowing someone finally told the truth. There was a quiet stretch then, broken only by the scrape of forks on plates. Finally, she said, I never thanked you. For saving me, too. You saved yourself the moment you stood up in that hall, I said. But I still signed those papers. I let him use my voice to hurt people. You also used it to stop him, I said. That's what matters, now. She blinked back tears. I keep hearing his voice in court, the way he said compassion needs teeth. It makes me sick. It should, I said gently. That's how you know you still have a soul. She reached across the table and took my hand. Hers were smaller now than I remembered, or maybe mine had just gotten rougher. Do you forgive me, Dad? She asked. I already did, I said, but it's not mine alone to give. What do you mean? It's in how you live now. That's where forgiveness grows, from the work, not the words. She nodded slowly, understanding. After she left, I went to the workshop. The plaque my granddaughter made, Truth Belongs to Everyone, caught the morning light, scattering gold across the walls. I let it sit there like a compass pointing home. I spent the afternoon repairing an old sign someone dropped off the night before. Henderson's Hardware, since 1962. The paint was cracked, letters half gone, but the wood underneath was solid. You could still see where another hand, decades ago, had traced each stroke with care. That's what time does. It fades everything except the intent. That evening, my daughter returned with my granddaughter in tow. Dinner delivery, she said, holding up a covered dish. And someone wants to show you something. The girl ran to the workbench, unrolling a sheet of drawing paper. On it were rough sketches, tiny storefronts, little people smiling, a river running through the center. At the top she'd written, The Riverside Trust. What's this? I asked. It's our new project, she said proudly. Mom said you used to help paint signs for everyone around here, so we're gonna make a place that helps old people stay in their homes. We'll need a logo. I felt a lump rise in my throat. You volunteering me? She grinned. You're the only one who paints straight enough. My daughter laughed softly. We figured we'd ask the expert. Well, I said, pretending to think, maybe something simple. A bridge, maybe, something that says together without spelling it out. That's perfect, my granddaughter said, as if it already existed in the air. After dinner they left, leaving the scent of pie and rain in the house. I sat on the porch with a mug of tea, watching the streetlights blink on. Across the river, the courthouse still glowed faintly. For the first time, I didn't see it as a place of fear or proof. I saw it as what it really was, a reflection. Just another pane of glass catching light. I thought about the people who'd been hurt, the families whose names I'd never know, and I whispered an apology into the wind, not for what I'd done, but for how long it took me to start. The phone buzzed. It was Luis. Hey, old man, they offered me a contract to rebuild the AV system for the new community center. You want a hand painting the sign when it's ready? I smiled, typing back. Only if you promise to keep your hands steady this time. He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. First one I'd ever understood. Later, before bed, I took out my brushes again. The small, fine one. The one for edges and corners. I dipped it in gold paint and beneath the old Riverside repair lettering added a new line. Restored 2025. The letters glowed faint under the lamp. I whispered, That's the long apology right there. The house creaked softly in agreement. Midnight has a voice all its own. It hums low through the pipes, sighs against the windows, settles in the corners like dust that's learned patience. That night, the first in a long time, without deadlines, hearings, or headlines, I sat in my workshop listening to it breathe. The river outside whispered through the open window, soft, constant, forgiving. On the bench before me lay a clean scrap of cedar, plain smooth, waiting for a word. I hadn't painted for anyone else in weeks. The brushes were dry, the gold leaf still sealed in its book, but my hands itched for purpose again. So I mixed the paint, steadying my wrist. My reflection watched from the window glass, older, yes, but not defeated. Just honest. Sometimes the hardest thing about aging isn't the ache in your bones, it's the noise in your memory, every mistake, every regret, every kindness you meant but never managed. It all comes back when the world finally goes quiet. I thought about my wife, the way she'd hum while hanging laundry, the smell of lavender soap, the way she'd always touch my shoulder when she passed behind me so I wouldn't flinch. She would have loved this piece. I thought about my daughter, strong again, leading the new Riverside Trust with Delaney at her side. I'd visited that morning, the place already buzzed with purpose. Old folks sipping coffee, volunteers laughing, sunlight through clean windows. And my granddaughter. She'd drawn murals on the walls, her letters uneven but proud. She'd signed them all the same way, painted with Grandpa. That's when I realized something simple. The story wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the ones who'd carry it forward, to the ones who'd learn that truth and kindness are both crafts. You practice them, and if you're lucky, they stick. I dipped the brush and began to paint. Slow strokes, deliberate, each one breathing with the rhythm of the river. The word came easy, like it had been waiting all along. Steady. Just that. No flourish, no gilded border. Simple letters, upright and clean. I hung the piece by the back door where the morning sun would find it first. Then I sat back, let out a long breath, and for the first time in months, the tremor in my hand was gone. A car rolled by outside, then another, their headlights flashing briefly across the workshop. I thought about Rowan somewhere behind bars, probably rehearsing speeches to convince himself he'd been misunderstood. Maybe he'd even start to believe it, but the city wouldn't. Not anymore. Because somewhere out there on 32 front doors, new signs were going up. Signs that said home care partnered by the Riverside Trust. Signs painted straight, gold leaf pressed into wood by steady hands that had learned what truth costs and why it's worth every penny. The clock ticked past 1. I poured myself a small whiskey, raised it toward the plaque my granddaughter had made. Truth belongs to everyone. To the ones who still believe, I said softly, and to the ones learning how. The house answered with a creak, a gentle echo of approval. Outside, the first light of dawn began to touch the river. I opened the door, breathed in the cool air, and whispered to no one in particular, maybe to her, maybe to all of them. It's straight now. We did it. Then I turned off the lamp, letting the gold on the word steady catch the first thin stripe of morning, and finally went to bed. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon, so you'll never miss the next story that reminds us what truth, love, and forgiveness really sound like.